Hi, my name is Willie, and today I'm going to talk about some Wisconsin engines. If you haven't seen my earlier videos working on this Wisconsin engine, I suggest you check them out. If you have, well, thanks for watching. As for what models these engines are, this one is a TFD, and that is a THD. This is an older engine. This predates the THDs. I bought this one mainly for parts. This was the first one I had bought. This was the second one. I just bought this a few days ago. This was the first one I bought because it had the electric start and the electric ignition, which is really nice. But it was missing parts. It was missing the carburetor and the fuel pump, as well as the governor linkages. And the governor shaft itself is actually seized on this housing. So I was looking around for some parts, but muffler is actually really nice. It's got a cast iron base on it, so this muffler will last a long time. So I'll probably save that. I also like the fact that it's got a nut on the bottom, so you can probably get it on and off, but I don't think that's ever going to come back off. But I'll keep that original muffler. I might even have it painted or something like that so it won't rust. I don't know. But it's got a nice air filter on it, which is also a good start too. This one was complete, however it had quite a few issues. There was some missing studs. I had to add some studs to it. I think I'll modify these for some screws, but I drilled out the old studs and threaded it for 5/16 studs. Different things like that. So, and it had some stuck exhaust valves in it. So when I first got this thing, I had to take the head off of it just to free up the valves, and all of the bolts on this side of the head were stuck. So what I did to get these freed up is I used a propane torch to heat up the block. I didn't want to use acetylene because I don't want to warp the head. So I heated it up with some propane, and I stuck my Max Access kit, which is a socket wrench that has a hole in the center for studs. Stuck my Max Access Craftsman socket wrench on here and had my dad hammer the punch. The punch goes all the way through the socket wrench and rests on the head of the bolt. So I had my dad hitting the punch with a hammer to put some shock force on it while I had some torque on it, and that took all the bolts out, with the exception of the one over here, which was actually corroded pretty bad and snapped off. I was going to try and drill that out, but snapped off just below the deck at an angle, so I have a machine shop do that before I go messing up that block so they can get a good center on it and drill it out. But even then, that's just one bolt. That's not the end of the world. Even if that's off a hair, it can always be reamed out if it has to be, so not a major deal. So then I got into the carburetor on this thing. To my surprise, the carburetor actually had oil in it. Whether that oil was put in on purpose or if it seeped in there from being tilted on its side, I'm not sure. But looking at all the oil residue that's on this side of the engine, I think the engine has been tilted with the carb side down to keep water from getting into the open exhaust or the air filter. So either way, it worked in my benefit because the carburetor was actually in good shape. I didn't even have to take that carburetor apart. All I do is pop the plugs out and flush the oil and debris out, basically. So started working on this engine. I had to just tap that exhaust valve down, and that was fine. This one I actually had to take off and clean. If I was going to run this engine as a daily runner, I would probably do a valve overhaul on this thing because the valve guides and valves do have some wear on them. The valves will walk a little bit, but that won't keep them from running. These things will probably go to the point where you could probably knock those valves around. They'll still run. It is just a flathead. If you want to run it every day, I'd rather have it perfect and fix it now versus 50 years down the line from now. The muffler was completely rotted away. The baffle was actually loose on it. I'll show that later. So I cut the pipe off and knocked out the threads. That was a trick I got from Zippo Varga's channel, so I'll give him a shout out. To cut that pipe, or cut a slice in the pipe and then punch it out with a punch is just the most awesome trick for getting those exhaust pipes out, which was awesome. So stuck the carburetor on here and test ran, and it did run good, so I know all my parts are good on here. Both of these engines are the same displacement. They both have 3 1/4 inch bores and 3 1/4 inch strokes, which is like 860 cc's. So I have plenty of parts that'll fit between these two, since this one was missing so many parts. I still have to buy the governor parts for this, but I can get them online without too much trouble. The ignition does work on this, but I don't really need it, so I'll probably sell that to someone that needs it. I'm not going to ask a whole lot of money for that, but we'll see how that goes. This will be a later winter project, Right now I'm waiting for some paint to dry, so I thought I would do this video. But I test ran the engine. The engine did run good. One cylinder had really good compression. I think this one might be leaking because of the broken bolt. Not sure, but it was running on both cylinders, so I know all the parts are good. Here's the fuel pump that I needed for this engine that was missing. I will have to move the sediment bowl someplace else, but I'll keep that fuel pump original. I might put an electric pump on this one when I put it on the tractor, but we'll see how well the mechanical pump works. But I'd like to keep them original if I can. I also have a flywheel pulley ordered for this to be able to fit this into the tractor, since the tractor drives off the flywheel side. This flywheel is not too dissimilar from this engine. However, this one has holes drilled in it. The other one is just cast. There's no holes pre-drilled in it. So I'll have the machine shop machine this flat and drill the holes for a coupler. I have a coupler coming in the mail that'll clear this starter shaft and roll pin. It'll go right over here and it should fit in the hole. As for this, we're going to see if we can't fix this. If not, we can still get these screens on eBay. And I'm not sure if I'm going to leave this gauge here because you can't see this when it's in the tractor. We'll have to see how it goes, but I'm going to see if I can't salvage this and move it someplace else. We'll see how that goes. And I saved that governor piece off of the other engine to put on here since that one was seized. I think I already mentioned that. The exhaust manifold threads are pretty decent on here. They're not all rotted away. Can't see in there too good, can you? There's threads. There was some water in here. Thankfully, the water didn't cause any pitting to the exhaust valves. I did have to knock quite a bit of rust out of the exhaust ports before I started running it. Intake wasn't bad. That was pretty clean. No major problems in there, thankfully. And that would be a result of this engine being tilted down. Some oil had flooded into the intake manifold. I'm going to take this pulley off and put it on this engine to add some weight for if I'm doing tractor pulls. I want to mount this engine into my Craftsman tractor, which is a 90s Craftsman garden tractor. And it has I've had it in earlier videos. It's the Craftsman that had the Kohler opposed twin that lost the rod. That tractor has a cast iron front axle, so that'll support the weight of this heavy engine, which is over 200 pounds. I'd wager with everything on this thing, it's probably 250 pounds. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to lift this thing yet, but I'm thinking I might put some brackets off of the feet of the sump to be able to grab it. We'll see how that goes when I get to that point. But I had this engine up and running. It did run good, so I know the parts are all good, so I have these all set aside. I'm going to put them in the box over there. I also have a 6-volt battery set aside back in that bucket right there. I have to take this engine apart before I can test run this because the fuel pump has been missing, and there's also a spark plug missing out of a cylinder for a very long time, so I have to make sure there's no bugs or debris or junk inside the engine, as well as I'm going to have the generator and the starter professionally remanned to be sure that they're all in good shape before I start and run them, because I don't want to damage anything, because these 6-volt parts are just so hard to find. I want to make sure they're all in good shape, and I also have to make sure we clean out all the old grease out of these grease caps. Or grease cap. I think there's just the one. Clean all the junk out before I start running it, because I don't want to damage any of the bushings anywhere. And I'll probably have to take this off to get the fuel pump in here, and we'll have to see. I also have to get a clip for this because the one down here is actually broken. It's missing. So I'll have to see if I can't get those parts. They're just screwed on, so I can probably just order another cap or something. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm also missing the oil line on here, which I'm glad to say the other one came with. As for first starting this thing up, what I had done is I tilted this thing down with the carburetor side down to get some oil into the valve assembly, and I also tilted it with the engine up on the crankshaft to try and lubricate everything as best I could before starting it. I also checked to make sure the oil pump was working. I had a problem with oil being sput out from the displaced air from the pistons, and what I had found is you can pull the check valve out of the breather, which is this bolt right here. you can pull that check valve out, and then you can crank the engine over, and you won't have the air going in and out of this fitting, and it will pump oil. This oil pump does work. As you can see, it pumps oil. Let me see. I know it pumps. Yep, there it goes. The oil pump is good on that engine, which is nice. So let's get over to the other parts I had taken off. Now this engine had some issues. There's 2 broken bolts, one for the one head, and then 1 broken bolt down on the block. So I can salvage that if I have to, but it's nice to have the spare parts. Here's the original air filter cover, and it's supposed to have just a top that sits on top of here, but that's missing, and it has these extra L brackets all bolted to it. It has this weird piece just stuck on the top. It's just been mangled over time. Even the studs missing that would have supported the original cover on here is missing. So it's got quite a few issues, so I didn't really want to mess with that. And then the muffler actually is rotted away. It's just falling apart, and the baffle in there is actually loose in there. So I wasn't going to mess with that, but I'm planning on working on getting that one engine up running this winter. So if you like the video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. And thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the update, and have a good day. Bye.